The year is 961 AD. In the imperial palace of Kaifeng, China's most powerful generals have just finished a lavish dinner. The wine has been flowing for hours. The mood is warm. These men are not just commanders. They are sworn brothers, bound by blood oaths made years ago when they were just ambitious young soldiers. The man at the head of the table is their brother too. But he is also something else now. He is the emperor. 1 year ago, these same generals draped a yellow robe over his shoulders and declared him son of heaven. They handed him an empire. Tonight, he has invited them here to repay that favor. Now the servants are gone. The guards have been dismissed. The great doors of the banquet hall have swung shut. It is just the emperor and the men who made him. In the sudden silence, the generals feel something shift. They have all seen this scene before. They know how this story usually ends, with soldiers bursting through the doors, with swords drawn, with blood pooling on marble floors. Is this the moment? Have they been lured here to die? The emperor sets down his cup. He looks at his brothers, the men who handed him absolute power, and then he says something that none of them expect. To understand what happens next, you must first understand what China had become. 54 years before this banquet, the great Tang Dynasty collapsed. What followed was hell. In half a century, 5 dynasties rose and fell across northern China. 14 rulers from 8 different families claimed the throne. Almost all of them died violently. The pattern never changed. A general would grow powerful. He would murder his emperor. He would seize the throne. And then he would spend his remaining days waiting for the knife in the dark, because another general was always watching, always waiting. The later Liang dynasty lasted 16 years before a general destroyed it. The later Tang lasted 13. The later Jin, 11. The later Han, just 4 years before the cycle repeated. Fathers were killed by sons. Sons were executed by brothers. Emperors were butchered by the very men who had sworn to protect them. To sit on the dragon throne was not power. It was a death sentence. And every man in that banquet hall knew it, because every man in that hall had helped put the current emperor on that throne, which meant every man in that hall could take it away. The emperor's name was Zhao Kuangyin. He was born in 927 into a world that rewarded only one thing: the ability to kill and survive. His father served in the armies of 3 different dynasties, not out of disloyalty, but because 3 different dynasties rose and fell during his career. Young Zhao learned early that in the age of warlords, mercy was weakness and hesitation was death. He became a warrior of terrifying skill. Stories say that as a young man, he once rode an untamed horse without saddle or bridle. The horse threw him headfirst into a city wall. Zhao simply stood up, chased the animal down, and broke it to his will. That same iron determination carried him through the ranks. At the Battle of Gaoping in 954, when the Khitan cavalry shattered the imperial lines and 2 generals fled in terror, Zhao Kuangyin stood his ground. He rallied the broken troops. He turned certain defeat into victory. For his courage, he was named Supreme Commander of the Palace Guards, the most powerful military position in the empire. He controlled the finest soldiers in China, and when the emperor died and left a 7-year-old boy on the throne, everyone knew what would happen next. February 960 AD, reports reach the capital. The Khitan nomads are invading from the north. The court orders Zhao Kuangyin to march his army to meet them. But 20 kilometers outside the city, at a postal station called Chenqiao, the army stops. That night, Zhao Kuangyin drinks heavily and falls asleep in his tent. In the hours before dawn, his officers gather outside. They enter without permission. They shake him awake. And before he can speak, they drape him in a yellow robe, the imperial color, forbidden to all but the Son of Heaven. "Long live the emperor!" they shout. "Long live the emperor!" According to official history, Zhao Kuangyin knew nothing of the plot. He protested. He resisted, but by sunrise, he was marching back toward the capital. The child emperor was forced to abdicate, and Zhao Kuangyin ascended the dragon throne as Emperor Taizu of the Song Dynasty. The coup was complete, and astonishingly, not a single person had died. But Zhao Kuangyin was not naive. He knew that what his soldiers had done to the previous emperor, they could do to him tomorrow. The yellow robe that had made him son of heaven had also marked him for death. He could not sleep. Night after night, Emperor Taizu lay awake in the most magnificent palace in the world, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of boots in the corridor, the scrape of steel being drawn. Every general who had helped him take the throne was now a threat. Every sworn brother was a potential assassin. The same loyalty that had made him emperor could unmake him just as easily. Within months of his coronation, 2 regional commanders had already rebelled. He crushed them personally, leading his army into battle. But he knew there would be others. One night, he confided in his closest advisor, a brilliant strategist named Zhao Pu. "Why?" the emperor asked. "Has there been no peace since the Tang fell? Why does every dynasty end in blood? What am I doing wrong?" Zhao Pu answered without hesitation. "The generals have too much power. The emperor is too weak. You must take their armies, control their wealth, and strip away their strength." "But how?" the emperor asked. "How do you disarm men who could kill you with a single command?" Zhao Pu had no answer. So Emperor Taizu decided to find one himself. And so we return to that night in 961. The doors are closed, the guards are gone. The most powerful military commanders in China sit frozen, waiting for whatever comes next. Emperor Taizu breaks the silence. "I cannot sleep," he says. "Every day I spend in fear. I am miserable at my table and in my bed. Do you know why?" The generals say nothing. "Because," the emperor continues, "I know that each of you dreams of sitting where I sit. Each of you imagines what it would be like to wear this yellow robe." The words hit like a physical blow. The generals fall from their seats, pressing their faces to the floor, crying out their loyalty, begging the emperor to believe them. But Taizu raises his hand. "I believe you," he says. "I do not doubt your loyalty to me. But what about the men who serve under you? What if one of your subordinates grows ambitious? What if your soldiers decide that they want wealth and power, the way my soldiers did? What if they force the yellow robe onto your shoulders, the way you forced it onto mine?" He pauses. "Could you refuse them? Could any man refuse?" The room is silent. Every general understands what the emperor is saying. They are not being accused of treason. They are being shown a mirror. "There is another path," the emperor says. The generals look up. "The greatest pleasure in life is not power. It is peace. It is waking without fear. It is knowing your children are safe." He pours himself more wine. "Give up your military commands. Surrender your armies to me, and in return, I will give you everything else." He begins to list his offer: vast estates in the countryside, mansions in the capital, gold beyond counting, marriage alliances between their families and the imperial house, a retirement of luxury and pleasure, free from danger, free from the endless waiting for the knife. "We will be family," the emperor says. "There will be no suspicion between us. You will live as princes, and your children will live as princes after you." The generals stare at their emperor. Every previous ruler would have killed them. That was the pattern. That was how the game was played. You eliminate your rivals before they eliminate you. But this emperor is offering something that no one had ever offered before: a way out. The next morning, every general at that banquet submitted a formal petition claiming sudden illness. They asked to be relieved of their commands. Emperor Taizu graciously accepted. And with one dinner party, he had accomplished what 50 years of bloodshed could not. He had broken the cycle. But the generals were only the beginning. China was still divided into warring kingdoms, each ruled by men who had every reason to fear the new Song emperor. In 971, one of these rulers finally surrendered. His name was Liu Chang, the last king of the southern Han. He was brought to the capital in chains, expecting execution. Instead, the emperor invited him to dinner. When a servant poured wine and offered it to Liu Chang, the former king's hands began to shake. Tears streamed down his face. "I know my crimes deserve death," Liu Chang whispered. "I beg you, if you must kill me, do it quickly. I cannot drink this wine." In his own kingdom, Liu Chang had been famous for poisoning ministers he distrusted. He knew exactly what a cup of wine from an enemy meant. Emperor Taizu looked at him for a long moment. Then he took the cup from Liu Chang's trembling hands and drank it himself. He poured another cup. He handed it to the terrified king. "There is no poison," the emperor said. "There never was." From that day forward, Liu Chang became one of the emperor's most devoted followers. The man who expected death had received mercy, and he never forgot it. The most powerful of the remaining kings was Chenqiao of Wuyue, who ruled a wealthy coastal kingdom in the south. When Chenqiao came to the capital to pay tribute, Emperor Taizu's advisors saw an opportunity. "Arrest him," they urged. "Detain him. Force him to surrender his territory while he's in our power." The emperor refused. Instead, he treated Chenqiao as an honored guest. They toured the capital together. They drank wine together. And when the emperor learned that Chenqiao was secretly bribing his ministers with jars of gold disguised as gifts of seafood, he simply smiled. "What a generous gift," he told his chief minister, looking at the gold. "A pity he sent it to the wrong person." When Chenqiao asked to return home, the emperor's advisors were furious. Dozens of officials submitted petitions demanding that Chenqiao be imprisoned or executed. Even the emperor's own brother argued that letting such a dangerous rival leave was madness. The emperor ignored them all. He personally escorted Chenqiao to the city gates and handed him a sealed box. "Open this when you are halfway home." Days later, on the road back to his kingdom, Chenqiao opened the box. Inside were all the petitions, every document from every official who had demanded his death. The emperor had saved his life. He had shown Chenqiao exactly who wanted him dead, and he had let him go anyway. 6 months later, Chenqiao returned to the capital voluntarily. He surrendered his entire kingdom without a single battle. Emperor Taizu died in 976 at 49 years old. The circumstances remain mysterious. Some whisper that his own brother, who inherited the throne, may have played a role. But by then, his revolution was complete. The Song Dynasty he created would last over 300 years, one of the longest, most prosperous, and most culturally brilliant periods in Chinese history. He replaced generals with scholars. He built libraries and academies. He expanded the examination system so that a farmer's son could rise to the highest office through talent alone. He even decreed that no official should ever be executed merely for speaking their mind. The endless cycle of military coups that had drowned China in blood for 50 years simply stopped, and he had done it almost entirely without violence. Where other emperors executed their rivals, Taizu bought them estates and arranged their children's marriages. Where other rulers poisoned their enemies, Taizu drank from the same cup. Where other leaders answered conspiracy with death, Taizu answered with mercy and turned conspirators into allies. Historians call it the cup of wine that released military power. It became one of the most famous stories in Chinese history. A single banquet, a single conversation, a single act of radical generosity. And 50 years of bloodshed came to an end. Emperor Taizu of Song understood something that every tyrant before him had missed. The most dangerous enemies are not the ones you kill, they're the ones you create by killing.